Why did Darth Sidious even bother to have personal guards? Greetings acolytes and welcome back to the archives. The Emperor's Red Guards are a presence seen and never heard. Like crimson shadows, they are always looming behind the Dark Lord of the Sith wherever he goes, following him closely at the heel or flanking the doorway. On screen, we rarely ever see them fight, but we do know from various comics and reading materials and sources that the Red Royal Guards are a force to be reckoned with. In fact, by the reign of the Empire, these terrifying soldiers were considered to be the finest non-force sensitive and force sensitive warriors in the entire galaxy. We have made a couple videos diving deep into their history, training, and their exact threat level. But one question remains: why would one of the most powerful Sith Lords in history, Sidious, the man who personally slew a third of the Jedi Council in a matter of seconds, have any need for bodyguards? Well, my friends, the reason is actually quite practical, and in fact likely another one of Palpatine's strokes of genius. So let's open a holocron and answer the question. While Sidious could just incinerate anyone who steps to him with Force lightning, he was not so inclined to reveal himself as a wielder of the Force. During the rise of the Empire, Palpatine had already built himself up as a common man who could relate to the average galactic citizen. By showing himself to be a benevolent people person, the kindly Chancellor Palpatine gained a reputation as the Republic's own grandpa. So when he was voted in as the first galactic emperor, it was a unanimous decision, and the Jedi were framed for attempting to assassinate him. Public opinion on the Jedi Order quickly turned hostile because of the people's love for Palpatine. But now that the Jedi were gone, and the galaxy was under his thumb, the Emperor didn't really have to put up with so much of the facade. However, Palpatine was actually genius in deciding to maintain his identity as a non-force sensitive individual. Palpatine expertly explains why he chose to do this in a manifesto written in none other than the Book of the Sith. To boil it down to a summary, Palpatine accurately states that it would be unwise to replace the Jedi with a similar Force-based regime and order. Many of the average citizens didn't know much about the Force at all, and only knew that it was a Jedi. All they knew is that the Jedi had powers that they could not understand, and after their supposed usurping, there was an even greater stigma against the strange and unusual. So to reveal himself as a powerful Force-sensitive beings in the eyes of the Commonwealth, and reveal himself as someone with a similarly Force-based religion, there would undoubtedly be mistrust and backlash. Palpatine was so committed to keeping his identity that only a very small handful of people ever knew that he was a Lord of the Sith. And he always refused to reveal his true nature, even to assassins. If he were to strike down anyone he desired with the Force, he would risk exposure to potential witnesses. But this is why the Red Royal Guards were so important. It was their one job to protect the Emperor from all attempts on his life, especially in public or in situations where there were many other witnesses. Palpatine himself was, of course, able to sense impending danger coming his way. But while he could move himself out of the way, it was up to his guards to actually do the task of protecting the Emperor. There were some cases where the Emperor had the guards do his bidding of being the executioners while he was present, such as the time when he personally visited the Bothan Society and had them punished for working with the rebellion. That day, a pair of royal guards slaughtered several groups of Bothans to make an example. Very rarely did Sidious send a royal guard out to do various missions for him. For the most part, he left those duties to the Emperor's hands, or to his enforcers like Lord Vader. But while most might believe that Vader would be enough to keep Sidious safe, this wasn't always the case, and for a lot of the time, Palpatine did not deem Vader trustworthy. The job of ensuring the Emperor's safety had to be put in the arms of those who Sidious could rely on properly. There is no better example of this than in the Lords of the Sith novel. In that story, Sidious, Vader, and a handful of royal guards crash land on the world of Ryloth in the very early days of the Empire. They land somewhere far away from the nearest Imperial outpost, so a lot of the story revolves around their trek through the forest. In the forest, they face off against Ryloth's large insectoid predators and ambushes from freedom fighters trying to pounce on the opportunity to kill the Emperor. It was during these ambushes that Sidious has to put his head down and let Vader and the royal guards do their work. However, there is a point when a few of the freedom fighters get too close to Palpatine, and so in a rare moment, he reveals his true power, incinerating them with Force lightning, as he did not sense any other survivors. But even in life-threatening situations, Palpatine doesn't jump at the opportunity of using his powers unless it is absolutely necessary. This required him to put a lot of trust in his own personal guard. And this brings us to the next point. The Emperor's Guard couldn't just be anyone. They had to be brainwashed servants who were unquestionably loyal. The royal guards were trained to throw their own lives or the lives of each other for the sake of the Emperor in a moment's notice. They were so loyal that they only took instructions from Palpatine directly. They never adhered to the orders of Vader unless Palpatine gave the go-ahead. They were even prepared to fight off Vader if the Emperor so wished, and this was likely secretly part of their training. And they did actually fight off Vader on more than one occasion. Despite how powerful Palpatine was, he was no fool. He had learned from history that even the strongest Sith eventually fell to backstabbing or even lucky assassins. So while Sidious could make sure that he was the strongest around, he wanted insurance on that, even if that insurance was a few extra bodies to throw at a problem before he had to step in personally. But it's not like the royal guards were just meat shields. They were far from it. We said a moment before that they were prepared to fight Vader if necessary. And this is not a far-fetched concept, especially when we consider how extremely powerful they were in their own right. Each of them carried force pikes, double-sided vibroblades, heavy-duty blaster pistols, and repeating blaster rifles underneath their robes. The guards were trained with the Echani martial arts, a combat style that turned a normal person into a living weapon. It was a style that made one fast enough to keep up with even a Jedi, and it was said that it trained one to speak a language with their bodies using martial arts. On one occasion, a royal guard proved to have the reflexes to deflect blaster bolts with his vibroblade alone and kill the legion of stormtroopers by himself. Even if they weren't all force sensitive, they were more than capable of facing force adept opponents. They had trained in it. We in the archives did a comparison long ago according to the feats shown by the royal guards in Legends continuity, those that were fully able to contend with Inquisitors and Padawans in combat. And it was clear that the royal guards were more powerful than the Padawans and the Inquisitors. They were more efficient killers and just better fighters. This means that a group of 4 of them could very easily overwhelm a fully trained Jedi Knight or Master, and this allowed them to face down almost any threat that came up to them, including Vader, if but for a short amount of time. This once actually happened in canon when Sidious deemed it necessary to start retraining his apprentice Vader after the Dark Lord began showing signs of grief over his past. Palpatine ordered 2 royal guards to confront Vader, and Vader was able to fend them off quite easily with his lightsaber, but by no means was this an easy feat overall. It got worse when Palpatine decided to take his lightsaber away from him, allowing the royal guards to electrocute Vader with their force pikes. The confrontation ended when Vader exploded with force energy and reached out in rage, gripping the throats of every one of the guards. But that's when Palpatine himself intervened. It doesn't really matter that the guards weren't able to resist Vader's force abilities, because what we are showcasing here is their willingness to fight Vader, even without fear or hesitation. They were some of the few people in the entire galaxy that did not fear Vader because of how fanatical they were to Palpatine. Because of their extremely high skill level and unquestioning loyalty, they accompanied Palpatine everywhere. They were the only ones allowed to pilot any ship that Palpatine was in, and it goes without saying that they were among the few clued into Palpatine's true identity as Darth Sidious. However, this doesn't seem to faze any of the royal guards, and even if it did, none of them dared to say anything about it, even to one another. But anyway, my friends, this was the stroke of genius and why Sidious decided to invest in the royal guards. But tell us, had you ever wondered this before? Why the most powerful force wielder in galactic history needed guards such as this? And are you satisfied with the answer? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the channel, and may the force be with you.